CUVs Cars here. I'm here with what many people are calling CUVs, although more appropriately called their ultra compact SUVs. I've noticed a lot of owners watch my reviews, and I've done that on cars I own before too. I don't know why. It's kind of a weird phenomenon, it's kind of a weird thing, but I do it as well. And so what I want to say is, if you're an owner watching this, a lot of my commentary about this SUV, I think this is, the middle to upper part of its class. A lot of my commentary on this SUV is this class of SUVs in general is true of everything in its class. Even my favorite one in this class, the CX-3, which I'll link to a review of at the end. I feel the same way about that when put up against the CX-5, which they're very close in price when one is optioned high and one is optioned low. The Honda HRV, which I'll have a review of the Toyota version of this coming soon as well. I'll talk a little bit more about these SUVs and why you might just want to spring for the bigger version, which can be pretty close in price. I like the wheels on this guy. Also like the door handles integrated up in the door there. Helps with aerodynamics and looks kind of cool. And then coming around the back here, this is definitely a kind of futuristic looking SUV. So definitely traditional Honda styling on there. Let's go check it out.
I do love these metal roof racks up here. They look really good, and yeah, it works well. And the shark fin antenna back there is nice, and the spoiler makes it look sporty.
Another area where Honda does excel is these are total fold flat seats. They actually fold a little lower, almost, believe it or not. And that's kind of rare in this class of SUV. That was pretty darn cool. And it kind of does open things up, as I'll show you. With those folded down, you actually have a pretty spacious area back here, which more spacious than you might expect for this class of SUV. So good job to Honda there. A lot of these seats in this class don't fold flat, like I mentioned. Just under 30,000 at 27 full loaded out this guy with all-wheel drive. You still don't get power seats, which can save weight, so I suppose that's an advantage, but you do lose a little bit of flexibility there. Nice leather trimmed seats on this guy though. You definitely get the traditional Honda quality in that way. In case you've ever wondered, where's the super secret VIN area on my SUV? Don't worry, Honda has you covered there. No joke. Let me show you some of the cool features inside of this if you're absolutely set on this size of SUV. And then at the end I'll tell you why this particular class of SUVs kind of perplexes me. So it's got a good interior, expect from a Honda, and it's kind of cool. Everything looks absolutely black when you get in this SUV. But then when you press this awesome red start stop button here, everything springs to life. And this is a full backlit display. So that's very futuristic looking. Good job, Honda, there.
Over here you only have the slider, but at least on the steering wheel here you have a button to press.
So this screen, although it looks cool, still wish I had some sort of slider there, but I can kind of accept that since this gives an actual benefit, stylistically speaking. Here, a little volume knob would look no worse than these buttons. Also, this car has some very clever cup holders, very Honda-esque of them. If you have a cup that's bigger than this, they do rise up, and so you can fit bigger, deeper cups, but then you're not kind of forced into that option as well. With the door pockets down here, there are a couple of cup holders. I guess you could use these as, or one as storage, one as a cup holder, but otherwise, space is a premium on this class of SUV. A lot of flexibility there. Unfortunately, not as much flexibility in this little console back here. This goes to kind of why I would kind of recommend a bigger SUV. But of course this is Honda, so they give you all this space under here, which nicely leads into this HDMI in. If you get the screen, obviously you can put an HDMI source for it. That's pretty cool. As well as two USB slots and a cigarette 12-volt port. Most universally praiseworthy of Honda stereos, especially on the high-end head units and nav systems. Not the case here. For one thing, there's only 4 speakers up front as well, and these mostly do bass. Coming into the back and exploring this interior and back seat a little more. As this is a Honda, the interior is very nice and clean looking. Definitely up there with Toyota and Mazda for sure. Definitely looks a lot nicer than you might expect this classic car and this price point of car to look. I like that they kind of have the Audi-esque 3-vent system over here. That is very cool. One kind of surprise on this SUV, the cargo space is pretty small. The legroom for two 6 feet plus people is actually pretty good, which has been a complaint of some of these ultra compact SUVs, or CUVs as it were. Speaking of the back, for one of these class of cars, it's actually not bad storage wise. There's actually a few little areas off to the side here, and there's probably an area, and there's actually a spare tire in here, which is kind of nice. We're not going to grab exhaust or engine on this one, and I'll tell you about that now in the drive review. Alright, so on to the driving. The steering, as electric systems go, this isn't the worst one out there. One feature though is it has a sport mode on the transmission, which with the CVT, I leave it in a lot. Here is that sport mode, which I leave this car in a lot if I'm not just cruising on the highway or, you know, on a street. Really makes the car feel a lot more powerful. Beginning, but I know they were going for MPG numbers, which are good on this car, by the way. Brake hold feature, which at red lights is great. You just press the brake down pretty hard, and then the car holds while in driver sport, and then you just hit the gas when you are ready to go. Very cool feature that most Hondas have, and that comes down to the joke I made in the beginning about this being a all-wheel drive raised Honda Fit. For all intents and purposes, that's kind of what this car is. And when you compare the price of the Honda Fit to this, I think the Honda Fit looks like an incredible bargain. You know, it feels faster because it's lighter, and you get better handling, and you get a lot of space as well. So this video ended up being a, hey, go check out the Honda Fit review, in a way, if you don't have those very specific needs I mentioned earlier. You don't need the extra ride height, you don't need the all-wheel drive, which leads me to, I've complained in the past, I'm sure that's why Honda sent me one of the rare all-wheel drives of this car. The problem is that adds weight and kind of steals some of the power feel to a car that's already pretty far down on power. This is not me coming from someone who reviews a lot of performance cars. Other cars and other, you know, vehicles based off this engine feel a lot faster, and honestly, when merging onto the highway, when passing, when pulling out, you know, from a stop sign into like multiple lanes of traffic, even in sport mode, this SUV is much like I described the CX-3 Mazda, and not so much the Toyota, but we'll, you know, subscribe for that review. But definitely most of this class of SUV, the problem is there's no bigger engine choice. So they come across feeling slow, unless you're used to driving, you know, a much older car and just upgraded to this, and your older car had 75 horsepower, so this has 130. But if you've driven any other modern car, you'll notice that with the extra weight and size of this, and, you know, aerodynamics that come along with this SUV, it does leave you, most people I've talked to that own them, wanting more. Everything else about how it drives, though, is pretty great. I wish there maybe was like a sport version, like to kind of bring it up there to the Mazda. And the Toyota is pretty nimble. I got to drive it on a Formula One track. This guy has paddle shifters, which are nice. They actually make the CVT seem pretty quick, which makes sense. And because they've imitated gearing in when you use those, and CVTs have been used traditionally in race cars. The reason a lot of performance people you probably hear don't like them, is they kind of give the engines thrashy noises. I don't know if you can hear that over the air conditioning, but this engine's just, unless you have it in sport mode, and especially if you have it in eco, is just constantly thrashing along and along and along. And a lot of that's because of the CVT. Some companies have done that away with that, probably by extra sound, you know, materials. Nissan's one example where if you're not under a mid in a very certain range, there's no thrashiness, at least on the Ultima I reviewed. But yeah, outside the engine and CVT, which I know is a huge part of the powertrain, this SUV isn't bad because it is based on the Fit. It's not going to be a sports SUV, but it doesn't handle badly. Again, the steering would benefit from a sport mode for sure. As I go into a turn a little bit fast here, I'm a small turn, turning the wheel a lot. So variable ratio steering with a sport mode would be helpful to help inspire a little bit of confidence. But like I said, the suspension's not bad. But Honda's always been pretty good at, you know, not having particularly floaty cars as well. If you are living somewhere where you take a lot of turns and do drive a lot, because of the lack of a sport mode and everything like that, I would recommend the Mazda or even Toyota small version of this. From what I saw about it on the track, it was pretty good. All the newer Toyotas, I feel like I'm saying that about, and their new president has said no more adequate cars, which I feel like Mazda's realized for years they have to build a better car because they're the little guy. And then Honda's always tried to, you know, keep up with Toyota. So they've always, in my mind, if you're a Toyota person, sorry, but a lot of Toyota people I know were the ones who told me this initially. Honda's always tried a little bit harder than Toyota, been a little bit more creative in some ways. Toyota's always had, you know, been great at building a reliable, good noise and vehicle harshness, but, you know, no one ever looked at their cars and said, wow. So overall, would I buy this SUV with my own money? I would go for the compact SUV and just get a few less options on it. You get more space, you get more creature comforts and features, at least as an option. You just get, you know, they're quieter, they're usually a little bit faster. The best part is they don't really handle worse or feel bigger. There's a eco button here. I'm doing anything, you know, like highway driving, cruising in general, because it does seem to give increase in MPG. I also love, this reminds me of old BMWs actually. You don't see too many cars nowadays, including some of the newer BMWs, with an MPG gauge, you know, built right in there. That's pretty cool. Idea of fuel economy, I went 113 miles and burned about a half a tank of gas. Obviously, you may not drive more frugally than I do, but it gives you some idea. Final conclusion on this SUV, and this is a note for owners as much as potential buyers, is Honda CRV so close in price, and it gives you, in my opinion, so much more. Only imagine a few markets, and let me know if you're in the comments why you would probably get this over its bigger siblings, which are often very similar. This one's 27,000 loaded out, for example. You can get a lot of compact or mid-size SUVs in that same price point if you don't go crazy with options. You get more power. They seem to drive almost as well. The market I imagine for these is people who live in a city and need to parallel park a lot, so that those extra few inches really do make a big difference, or people who are going to get a car of this size but then want the SUV. In those cases, I would say get the hatchback or wagon versions of that car. Mazda makes some great ones. Everybody's starting to get into that game because you're not like losing handling, power, performance, and by power I mean these are a lot heavier than their wagon counterparts can be, and definitely their sedan counterparts, while not giving you that much extra versatility. Let me know any criteria I missed why you got the ultra compact, other than price and things like that, over the compact / midsize in the segments. Yeah. Well, next time, my speedy racers, drive on.